wanted to do a bunch of foliage and some sort of collage. And so I worked with a designer who he basically just like lifted all those different plants from some like old books he found. And then the color, I was more interested in it being like super colorful. I remember that being a big thing where it was like the music needs to be really colorful, so we need a lot of color going on. So the interior of the CDs and the jackets, one of them has a leopard, one of them has a tiger, and they're like, it's like a purple tiger, which is kind of crazy on one side, and like an orange tiger on the other side. That album was like the first time I ever made an album, so it was a little bit just like flying by the seat of our pants, kind of running gun. Like, it needs to be colorful, it needs to have a bunch of like jungly stuff just to go, and then we were just kind of tweaking from there. Like, we like in the interior of the packaging, like we have my tattoo because the record's dedicated to Zion, my first baby I lost. And so there's like little, like, they're not even Easter eggs, they're just little like details like that are pretty cool. There's like a quote from Frederick Buechner in that one that's really cool, which is sort of where the title of the album comes from. So there's like the details, I know, but it's kind of weird because like none of that's in digital, right? But when you talk about like art, so much of it is for this narrow segment of fans that are gonna actually buy like a vinyl or a CD, which, I mean, we haven't even made CDs of the last couple albums, but yeah, basically it's like a narrow, it's like a couple thousand people are gonna buy this vinyl, and that's the only people that are ever gonna see these details.
So
Yeah.
this album cycle, you had the music video for Dreams. What
Yeah.
was the thought process for like that video, or like what was like the pitch for it at least?
Same thing. It was like, all right, first time making a music video, what are we gonna do? So the bulk of the video was actually kind of storyboarded and like just, I mean, Ian shot by a good friend, Andy Mayer, and he's done a lot of video stuff for us over the years. We just kind of wanted it to be, yeah, dreamlike and kind of trippy. And so he had all this, like, just like loose, like biblical imagery, all this stuff that kept happening. But like there's like a, burning bush and all this stuff. But honestly, once again, most of it was just aesthetic driven. And man, we shot, trying to think how many days we shot, because we shot one day where we ran out to these like volcanic ash like area in eastern Washington, which is really cool. And then we went to like the desert, and then we like did a big edit, and we were like, we needed more woods. So then we went back out and filmed at the woods, and then it was like, I don't know if it's working. So then by that time it was snowing, so then we went to the snow, and then we edited it again. We're like, oh, we need a little bit more. And then we got like a golden hour thing like closer to Seattle. So it was like months of just testing a little thing, seeing if it worked. And then it was like, we don't have enough content, but now there's a whole other weather pattern outside. So we'll just go someplace different. Obviously there's like a sword in that one, and that has a lot of like imagery of sort of like make believe and using your imagination and adventure. I remember like when we made the video, my wife, I had like a 1-year-old, but my wife was like, maybe he had just turned 2 or something. He ended up like watching, and my wife was like, all right, I'm just never gonna be able to compete with you because like you have a video of you running around in the woods with a sword. So our son's just always gonna think you're like the coolest, which maybe I got a couple more years for that. I don't know. We'll see. I have a lot of ideas sitting at church where it's really quiet. I go to it's an Anglican church now. It was a Presbyterian church then, but we have a very like thoughtful service with a lot of quiet time, especially just like during a sermon. Sometimes it's one of the times in the week where there's like no distractions. Whatever subconsciously is like going on when I'm working on a project, a lot of times it will just kind of like bubble up, and I'll just write down notes. So, but that whole album, even more specifically, I just had the idea for the whole album in a specific sermon even. It was, yeah, it was a sermon on basically enchantment, this like dichotomy of the human struggle to like control our environment, cordon things off and sort of conquer our own reality, and how that leads to a pretty cold and fearful life. And it was sort of pitching that up against a more, I almost want to say like Narnian view of life that's pretty wild and dangerous. You know, obviously, like God is nothing that you can tame with your mind or your understanding. And it's not just like there's a great risk in following him. There's like, it's all, the whole thing is a release of control. So I had the idea for Beyond Control, and I just remember sketching this like journey from a dark world to some sort of like enchanted Narnian type imagery thing, but I really wanted it once again to be like a collage kind of thing. So that's where that kind of all hit me like in that, just sitting there for 20 minutes or whatever. And then a good friend, Chase, decided to, help me with it, and he did so amazing. I had like references of like the type of collage art I wanted to do, but then he just like rated royalty-free stuff like through over the internet for a couple months, and we just did tons of variations, and then until we landed on it. And then at the very last minute I was like, we got to put like the tiniest like little figure in like the snow walking towards the mountain, and you actually can like find it if you look really hard. There's a little person walking there.
On the inside of like the CD, and also I think it's the instrumental artwork.
Yeah.
You have like the water with like the ship in there. Is there any like anything behind that one, or was it just like another
journey type of image, and there's some like nautical imagery in this ocean. End of Gone, I think I like pray I slay the dragon and find the shore, but it's just journey imagery. So yeah, there's that ship there. Like, I'm pretty proud of that artwork. Trying to think of other cool details. Like, I hand wrote all the stuff on the inside of that packaging, which was tedious and cool too. So yeah. And then on the back of like, for people who have that vinyl on side 4 or like side D, there we were able to put the audio on like 3 sides at 45 RPM, which is like a little better quality. So then we had a whole extra side, but we didn't have we could have put like some instrumentals in there or something. But anyways, so there's an etching of like David lifting Goliath's head, which is pretty wild. You can barely see it, but it's still kind of cool. The first 2 records, I was working with, they're very artistic, but I was basically working with like designers, like graphic designers, where I'm the artist. And then with Tobias, I just loved his artwork, and it was just a DM on Instagram, and he ended up, being willing to take the project, which was amazing, and work with like a just hyperactive, crazy American. He's from Zurich, and he's just an incredible mind. I think of myself as basically a producer. I'm not really like amazing at any instrument. I'm not like the best singer or anything, but I can like gather a lot of things from a lot of people and collage them together and create like sonic art and also visual art. So the battle that we always had, me and Tobias, was always like, he was doing so much stuff and I wanted to use all of it, but I really had to learn through that process, like what's worth keeping and not. He made all this stuff, and I loved the whole like merch world. We designed this like live video series in this airplane hangar where we built like 250 cardboard boxes, and he built them into like I don't know, he built them into like walls in this tower, and he painted all of them. So we had all these visuals that are incredible, but when it came time to the album cover, like he really was married to this heart hand album cover, and I just did not like it. I probably didn't like it for like 2 months, and I really wanted it to be a little bit more intricate. I was like, this music's way more intricate, it's the most collaborative thing we've done. Like it needs to be a little busier, but like he was just right, you know. Looking back on it, he was just right. It's a symbol, and the symbol is more powerful than whatever I would have wanted it to be. It was a really wild time because we made that whole project in like 5 months, like front to back, like starting it to releasing it. And he came to Seattle for like the last 9 days before the album came out, basically. And we like finished the artwork, finished the packaging with like the risograph print place, which basically for that project we use these vintage Japanese printers that they can print ink colors that like no digital printer can print. So we have to, even to this day, like if we make the vinyl, we basically have to like assemble them by hand. And then we did the printing procedures. So we did all that, and then we shot a music video, and we shot this live series, which was really crazy stressful because we had this orchestra and all this stuff. And then the album came out, and we did it all in like, I think it was 8 or 9 days, and we were just exhausted. Oh, and we did an art show like under the Space Needle at an art gallery in Seattle where he hung up a bunch of stuff. We did a listening party, and we did all, it was just like totally crazy. And I kind of wish I could do it again, but he was probably like scarred for life.
He's like, never collabing again.
Yeah. It was like, all right, this day we're gonna write a music video achievement. Andy's flying into town, and we're gonna shoot a music video. We don't know what we're doing. We got to figure it out. Next day we're gonna hang up all your art under the Space Needle, this gallery, and I have the first like vinyl like pressing, and we're gonna play the record, and we have like 50 fans coming, and we need to figure out like what we're gonna do. And then the next day we're gonna be at this airplane hangar, and we have 12 hours to like build a whole set, get the orchestra in, record the whole thing, and then like be out of there. It was like, it was crazy, you know. I was really involved with The Beauty Between, but because The Beauty Between is so strong, we spent a lot more time on Zeal because I wanted it to like live up to it. I wanted it to be as good. So initially it was, okay, this album is like the clearest sort of theme record we've done, probably we've ever done still, where it's like, it's laser beam focused on sort of melting the ice of like a bitter, jaded person of faith, right? It's like, it has very clear like aim. So initially we had all of this like Jesus movement, like, you know, hippies being baptized. We were like really heavy into that, and we made this huge storyboard or like mood board. But then I wanted it to be in the fine arts world as well, because we just come from Tobias doing that. So then my friend Catalina, she took up like starting to do a ton of different options of sketches and drawings and all this stuff, and I have piles of them. But we tried to basically say, all right, Zeal is a character that is this like jaded, bitter person that is really looking to be enchanted and find their childlike faith. And it was like really cool, but it wasn't getting childlike enough. What kind of flipped it a little bit was when we started getting into like Sunday school imagery as being because the thing about like Sunday school is that it has like a really negative connotation. It's like that's where kids are brainwashed. Like people have these like scarred memories from like growing up in the church and how like the leaders weren't good and But all of the art imagery is very childlike, and that's kind of what we're looking for. And it's also a challenge to go back to that imagery and basically like reframe it as like beautiful and inspiring. When that happened, it was like, we got to get Bible felts just to play with. So I got like the biggest set of Bible felts you can get, and created the cover for the Rush, which is really sick. And I loved doing that. We also made like a little music video with the Bible felts. But once we were kind of in that space, I was working with a different set of more graphic designers, and it was like, I don't have time to like own the packaging this time, so I really need like super pros to do it. And my friend runs a really incredible like kind of shop here in Seattle, they were kind of taking the Sunday school thing. They were taking the ideas of like a character, and it was like, all right, Chad, how are we gonna do this? This is gonna be impossible because you're like so picky. And they were flying through like idea after idea after idea, showing me, and over the weeks. And then as an aside, like in their studio one day, I just saw they had tried that circle rainbow thing that was cut in half, like dark to light. And I was like, that is perfect. It's that one right there. Like that is perfect. And we tried it a couple ways. Like we tried making it look like the Bible felt, like out of felt. We tried just making it like more like raw graphic designy. But ultimately, I was like, I think it needs to be like real. Like I think it needs to be something that's crafted. I think crafting is like what feels a little bit more DIY Sunday school with this. So my grandma and my mom quilted, or not quilted, but they like sewed this flag that's huge. It's probably, I don't know, 5 by 5 feet. And then we just took a photo of it for the cover. But it felt like this perfect, it just felt, once again, like same with the Be Between, it felt like, oh, this is a huge symbol. And it can mean a lot of different things. Like you can basically assign your meaning to it for like whatever songs in the record are like pulling you. There's dark and light, there's contrast, there is all this rainbow imagery. It's colorful. It's also like, it's not kaleidoscopic per se, but it's like geometric. And we just needed more sort of Sunday school imagery. So there's these magazines. I mean, anybody can get them. They're really cool. They're called Crap Hound magazines. And it's like found iconography. I don't know who makes them, but it's a company that basically just takes pictures of things like all over the place, from old books and signs and sides of buildings, and then they just put imagery that you can use in these huge volumes. So they had one that was called, I think it was called like Religion and State or something like that, and there was just tons of like angels and like, you know, there's like the soldier with like a big shield that has like faith and breastplate of righteousness. Like there's all these like Sunday school things, praying hands, crosses. So we ended up using a lot of that. That one was pretty involved, actually, really involved to narrow that down. It went through a lot of different phases.
I was gonna ask you like whether or not you like went out and bought like the felt stuff, or like, because that feels like you just like dug that up from your church basement or whatever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's just so perfect, like as with the theme and everything.
I know. Yeah, I know. It was just a thought, and it was just, it's kind of the you know, I have like an emotional bent towards, if I can feel, it's just kind of like the punk mentality. Like if I can feel like I'm pushing on something, it gives me energy. So pushing on something that's corny, or like something that people would think is corny, and like making it incredible, like, yeah, I get fuel from that a little bit. So thinking of Sunday school things to like use that people would be afraid of was like what I wanted to do with that. It took so long to cut them out too. You have to cut out each felt.
Oh, really?
I had my whole extended family doing it. We got this cabin, this Christmas cabin this year. It was really fun. And like my aunts and uncles, my parents, my sisters, like everybody was like sitting at this table, like cutting out all these felts because I couldn't do it by myself. 2020 is when we started like going up to, like, because everything was shut down, we started doing this like we basically just went to this retreat center that was like graciously like offered to us to like use, had a studio in it. So everybody flew up, we did this like whole like quarantine thing together, we made a bunch of stuff, and it was like incredible. Things are still slow, but like at least we got to be together and like make a bunch of good stuff. And the world's pretty crazy, and we've made some content that should be this EP called Power Perfect. There was no like really greater plan per se at that point. But then when we wanted to fully nail like, all right, this is the EP, this is Power Perfect, we're going to do these songs or these 4 songs, we had it pretty narrowed down. We like unbelievably to us, we were like able to go back to the same place. And we were like, oh my gosh, okay, this is like a real thing. We got to take advantage of this. And we had started calling it Camp Kaleidoscope as a joke, but at that point it was like, we are going back to use this like facility. Let's like make the most of it. So we decided to film the 2 live streams. So everybody's at home and all these bands are starting to do like live streams where people can buy tickets to watch like a live event of their band playing a show. So like we're pretty nuts. So we literally filmed The Beauty Between and Zeal in the same afternoon, like back to back on different parts of the property, with the whole team, like film team up there and everything. It was insane. And then the day after that, we flew prop up, and then we filmed us playing through the Power Perfect EP live, like in the studio, which was really sick. So we had like 3 live streams from that trip, and we had the Power Perfect EP like wrapped up. And then also, I think that was the time where Matthew came for like 21 days or something. Like he was here for a long time. Like he was at my house for like a couple days before that, and then, or like a week before that, and then the band flew in and we went to camp for another 10. It was something like that. I'd always had this idea of, if we have an album that's about like seeing a perspective, we have to do like a magic eye thing. And like very few bands have ever done that, which really surprised me. Like I thought it would be like a thing that had happened for sure more than it had. Matthew and I were like basically just hours in the studio, like, well, for him, because I was like working on the music here in my home studio for that first week with some of the guys, and then he would like be on this couch behind me just like burning his eyes out trying to figure out how to get this cross to look good in like a janky magic eye like software we bought from somewhere for like $12 online. Like it was super janky, and he kind of got stuck on it, to be honest. So but we're like super collaborative, so we ended up like basically figuring it out together and got it to work and made 2, we made basically like 2 options. But he had taken this photo of a flower at camp. He does like a blurry, like sort of like slow shutter speed thing off. You can get like these swirls. And he, I think it was in the first camp we went to, July, he took this photo of like this red flower that looked so chaotic and beautiful. Like I just always loved it. So I was like, you've got to use this photo for the magic eye. And we're going to put a cross in it. And the whole thing is like seeing through, to the other side, like changing your perspective. Because what I'm doing is musically and visually is so collage, it's not necessarily always like linear. It's not like idea, plan of action, execution. My Instagram feed, I don't really follow very many people. Well, Kings follows nobody, but then my personal one, I only follow a few things. But like my algorithm is pretty dialed to like what I want to see aesthetically that is inspiring. So to be honest, like I'm always just looking at, not always, but when we're in art mode, I'm always looking at things and just saving different things, and they can be all over the place and unassociated, but they're like feeling right to me. So what I ended up saving a lot of during this time was, use your imagination with me, but it's like expat or like army veteran who's like the lone guy who like lives in the woods by himself in like a Volkswagen like van, and he's basically, he has like his own like little like organic farm on his property, and he like lives off the land, and he's like alone, but he's kind of a hippie, but he has all of this like, he has like these really deep wounds and scars from like battle. So this is like my character is this graying old man who's like living in the woods, trying to find a peaceful life off of the land to like escape the sort of like terrors of his mind, or like the things that are haunting him, right? So there's like, I'm like discovering brands like Nigel Caborn is like a UK guy who samples like vintage military clothing from all over the world, and then he like recreates clothing out of them. or like engineered garments, or like I'm going to the army surplus store a lot. And that's just sort of this world we're building, right? So anyways, in the Instagram feed, I see a lace mask. I totally like ripped it off from some creator. I think they're in the UK. I tried to buy one from them, but they were sold out. And it had like it had like some little flowers in it. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of what this feels like, because this feels like it's a little crazy to make something like that. So there's a little bit of like a mental, like, what is this person doing? But there's a huge escapism in it. There's also like a huge playfulness in it. There's also like your face is like right up against this like beauty from the earth in it. There's a hiding in it. There's like a safety behind a mask. So there was like all these things that just felt like, oh my gosh, like I want to wear one of those in a music video. Initially, it was just like, I'm just going to wear it in a music video. And I had this idea to get a tattoo live in a music video for a long time. My mom and I sewed a couple masks just like in that style. And we shot the Joy music video where I get the baptized imagination tattoo, like one shot, the camera's just pulling in. And by the end of it, like I have the like tattoo, the idea like scarred on myself. And I'm wearing this mask with all these flowers in it. Matthew's just like, he's just incredible. He's not really, I don't really think of him as a photographer. I think of him as like an artist, but he just took the most incredible photos afterwards, just around. This is in my childhood church. We like used their gym. And outside, he just took all these photos of me, and they were so good that later on in the process, when we kept trying to think of like what the cover was going to be, Matthew and I had so many ideas. Like we were going to like, I was going to like lay in this lake or like on top of this mirror, or like we just had like idea after idea after idea. And like nothing was better than me, like my eyes staring through that mask, like straight into his camera. So it ended up being the cover we chose, you know?
There was so many of like those cool visuals like from there. How could you like pinpoint down like what the actual cover is going to be?
Dude, it was really hard. I'm trying to think what like the like most like biggest runner up one was. Well, basically once we had that, because the thing is like we had never done photography, right? It was always like some sort of other art form. Matthew and I were really big on let's do a photography package. So once we had those photos of my face, it was like sort of like game over. Like, how are we going to beat this? And we just couldn't. So basically, we come out of like sort of lockdown, not even lockdown, but just everything kind of being shut down. And we're like one of the first bands to do like, bands were touring, but we did like a big tour. We played the whole country, and we played the album live before any of it was out. 10 shows in, we were like, oh gosh, like we have two totally different stories here, two totally different albums. So when we came back that summer, we knew we needed to like split them up and finish them as two separate pieces of work. So the Baptized Imagination one was everything I just talked about. It was very clear. It was like, this is a very isolated character. This is a very like isolated story of Chad. This is like a very like hard, uncomfortable album. And it's beautiful, but it's like, it's sad and it's lonely and it's these visuals. And then the other stuff was very clearly all the fun we'd been having at camp when we were together. It wasn't a story about me. It was just a story about, this is how the band has like community and encouragement and just like honestly just fellowship and friendship. So all of those things were light, and we went back and forth a billion times on what it should be called, because like it's pretty absurd to like self-title your like sixth album after yourself, and like when would you ever even do that? But ultimately it just felt like the true thing to do, because the album was just basically referencing the band being friends. So it is actually about us. It's not like saying to the world, this is everything King's Kaleidoscope is. It's sort of like more like, this is who we are for each other, So it was like, all right, well then what is that going to be? kaleidoscopes. Like it's got to be then kaleidos. Like that's we're calling it that. That's what it is. So, anyways, yeah, Daniel, our drummer, and I were just driving. I think it was more people in the Jeep, but we were like just bouncing this idea back and forth. He's like, "What if we had a bunch of mirrors and we chopped them up to be all like reflective?" And I was like, "We could just literally make a like kaleidoscope-esque mosaic out of them, and then you'd like see yourself in it, you know?" Because we had this song that's like says you're the kaleidoscope or you're a kaleidoscope. So we were just riffing on that idea and loved it. Incredible idea in our minds, and then like it. I think that it took probably like 9 months to develop. So we found this fan, Evan, and this is the first version he made. You put like an 18 by 18 inch soldered mirror. But to like develop this was so hard because so he soldered the front and back, but when you solder the back, it burns off the silvering, which is like the part that gives a reflection. Like a mirror is basically like glass, and then the back of it is like this like silver material that makes it reflect. You solder the back of it, it like burned it and made it all like crazy. So we were like, okay, that didn't work. So he tried it again. He ended up making a good one, but in between him trying his other one, I had my dad cut the plastic mirrors from the tour, the stage set from the Baptism Agitation tour. He cut out this pattern, and then I built one with like grouting tile, and like I made that one myself too. But then that one had too many scratches on it, so that didn't look good in camera. And then once Evan made one that looked good in camera, it was like, okay, what do you point it at? How do you get the camera angle? Like, what are we going to look at? Are we going to look at clouds? Like, are we going to look at sun? Are we going to look at band in it? Like, it was just kind of a nightmare, to be honest. So, finally we ended up getting it in a studio and getting it like looking perfect. And that is sort of the cover for A Radiant Reason, the single with the graffiti around it. Even that one looked a little too like cold for like the whole cover. Like it was too like a piece of artwork in like Batman's like lair. Like it was a little too like Marvel or like, it was like it has to be bright. We had these sort of more crazy photos that we tried where we ran down to the lake a couple minutes from my house one day in the summer, and I was like in the water just holding it, and it was reflecting all this crazy light, like crazy sun sparkling on the water, hitting the mirror, then like bouncing back at the water. It was like doing all these really wild things that were sometimes even like blowing the camera lens out. Like the light from a mirror is so bright, the camera can't handle it. Mm-hmm. So that was like experiment day basically. But as we were like beating our heads up for months about like how are we going to capture this thing? It looks too cold if we shoot it straight on. It looks too like warbly to do it like to the sun. I just zoomed in on one of the photos of me like holding it in the water, and it was like a sparkle like explosion basically. And it just felt like, oh wow, this is like what these songs kind of feel like this is incredible. And nobody really can like know what it is, but it's so vibrant. It's like perfect for what the songs on this album are. And it is a mirror, which is like the sort of like the bigger like sub context of what the album is saying is, just like seeing yourself in a part of a thing. Also, I'm stumbling here a little bit, but there's another thing of a mirror chopped up like that and soldered together that's uneven and imperfect. That's what a band is like. Because a band is all of these pieces trying to fit perfectly together, but there's like a human craftedness to like the lines aren't like perfect. They're like soldered together and they're like uneven a little bit. I really wanted like a like rambunctious element to it because the album isn't very it's got like it's very meaningful, but it's not necessarily like serious. And if the mirror's on its own, it can be a little bit it can just have a little bit more of like a regal like vibe to it. But the album is more like there's like some corniness and some silliness and some like there's like a lot of playfulness to it. So the colorful graffiti is like big, and we had a friend. Yeah, we basically just had a friend like do a ton of tags for it. And then I did one that's also, if you ever see I don't know where we would have posted it. Well, it was on the tour posters. The one that says the full King's Kaleidoscope, and they're kind of like weird looking, like sci-fi looking letters or whatever. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
isn't that like taken from the mirror? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
if you look in the mirror, it was like a treasure hunt. Like, okay, this is an E, you know, or like this is an O right here. Okay, found an O. Okay, how do we find a K? You know, and I was like finding letters out of the pattern of the mirror, and then I just lifted them all and like arranged them.
the Radiant Reason music video, like that, like aesthetically, it just like works so well with
Right.
this album, just because it's like just a bunch of friends just having fun.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
absurd fun.
what
Yeah.
was the pitch for that one? Just like because you guys were on tour at the time, just like
Yeah.
let's just go out and just shoot us, just doing whatever.
Don't dance with the devil in D. I hold hands with the powers that be. I'm in step with the spirit in me. Alright, I'll be alright. Being is brighter with you. You're my radiant reason.
The pitch for that one was we have 3 days off in a row, and I'm not gonna like waste 3 days off. So so I remember being in I had that idea of like, dude, we have to shoot a music video out here. Like, what are we gonna do? Okay, we could do something in like cars. We could do, I wanted it to be like a shorter form of the song. Like, I wanted it to be like, it was like, we got to do one for like, All Right Kid or Radiant Reason. We have like 2 days off. We can do it in El Paso or Phoenix. And I was like, well, if we're doing cars, there's probably way better cars in Phoenix. So, I mean, literally, like before the show, I was just joking with everyone, like on Turo, that car rental app, like, dude, we could get a Ferrari, or like, we could get a, you know, like, look at all these cars we can get. It was like, oh shoot, this one's like manual. Nobody's gonna know how to drive it. I'm just like being really fun about the whole thing. But then it's like, well, okay, if we rent these cars, like, where are we gonna do it? So then I'm just on Google Maps in the green room before the show and after the show, like looking for where there looks like empty roads. Or like asking people on Instagram, like all this stuff. I have this memory of like packing, like the team's like packing up after the show, and I'm like, just kind of like F it, like we got to do it tomorrow. Like it's gonna be 98 degrees, but like what are we doing? We just have to do this. We needed to make sure we could get both cars at the same time. So I went ahead, I booked the Hummer on my phone, and then my manager had the Lambo on his phone, or our tour, or our front of house. And he was like, he's like on the stage, and he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" You know? And I'm like, "Don't think too hard." And I just like hit like book, and then it was on. You know? So the next day, the video guy woke up like super early and was like driving for like 2 hours looking for location spots, and he's like, he went towards this area that I had found where it looked like they were building new houses. So like new housing development, but like empty road, right? Because nobody lives there yet. Dude, this is gonna be great. And he goes, he's driving along. We're like FaceTime. He's like, no way. And I go, what? He's like, this housing development is called Radiant Springs.
No way.
He's like, it's meant to be. So the whole day was just like a huge risk. Like we picked up both cars. We didn't know if like cops would see us filming and not want us to. We found that abandoned gas station. We filmed out there. Like cars were going by the whole time. And just nobody cared. Like it could not have gone smoother. Like we obviously needed to take breaks because it was like almost 100 degrees out. But yeah, we filmed for like 6 hours and just had a really fun time, just being absurd with a freaking Lamborghini. And that is part of the thing of that song, was like, King's Kaleidoscope should not have a music video with a Lamborghini because it's corny. And that's exactly like why I want to do it. Like, you know, like if you're like if you're like a gospel rapper or something like that, like you can't really do that because their whole thing is like, we're anti like materialism. Like they have a whole,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, well, we just have a totally different angle on this. Like we're trying to be absurd and like just have fun, and it's fun to have a day off tour and like gun a Lambo like down a straightaway, like launch mode and like see how fast we can go like that. Like we have the freedom to do that. Not that they can't. I'm just saying like people would criticize them for that. We're like, we knew it wasn't gonna matter and we wanted to just do it. So
That's hilarious.
Being is bright.